Just earlier sitting in, just want to mention Benjamin Samuelson. He came in handy today. He, the guitar player over here, he helped drive the pianist over here. If you guys saw my Facebook post earlier, so we're all good to go today. Let's go to, maybe I'll introduce the band first. Let's do that. So we have Benjamin Kovacs on the tenor saxophone. Give it up for Benjamin Kovacs. Ian Kenselaar is on the acoustic bass. Nic Cacioppo is on drums. And Oscar Williams is playing the keyboard today. My name is Peter Lin. I play trombone. Thank you very much. Just wanted to mention that, well, first of all, my name is Peter Lin. I'm actually part of the Young Adults program here. For those of you who know, TANG is Taiwanese-American Next Generation, and I've been doing this for about 5 years. It's been about a 3-year break since I've been back as a staff member, but I'm proud to be back in this program. I'm very happy to be here. So what are we doing today? So today we're going to explore some Taiwanese melodies with kind of like a jazz flavor, you know. I'm really proud to be standing in front of other Taiwanese people. It's always nice to play for an audience that they kind of look like you know. And I think it's a very special thing to bring the band over here playing this music. So just a slight background on my upbringing. My parents are actually from Taiwan. They came here for graduate school over in Washington State. I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but I was only there for a year, so it doesn't quite count. I grew up in Whitney, New Jersey, where actually I went to Taiwanese church. Tom Yu over here is the one that introduced me to this whole program. And I started music at a young age. I started with violin, Suzuki method, for those of you who know. I think a lot of Taiwanese people would know. Violin, piano, you know, the classic stuff, right? And then 4th grade is when I started to pick up the trombone because of good music education in my area. And I started taking lessons from local teachers around town. I went to William Patterson for my undergraduate degree in jazz performance. I took 2-3 years off working for a great nonprofit called Jazz House Kids. And then I went back to graduate school at Rutgers University. Ooh, Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers.
Rutgers University for jazz performance as well. And what I do now is I'm a freelancing jazz trombonist and educator in the New Jersey, New York area. And every so often we'll do something here in Pennsylvania, right? So, go figure. Just as curiosity, like, how many people here listen to jazz? Okay, it's about more than half. That's actually more than I thought. That's cool. That's great. I just know from my own personal experience that when I was growing up, my parents were more playing like karaoke music in the background, and when we're doing long drives, they would put on like more like classical music. I listened to a lot of Bach and Mozart in the car. So how did I even get to know jazz in the first place? I think the first instance I think most people can relate is jazz band in their school. Thanks to great music education in my area and great teachers, they have really influenced me in making me check out a lot of this music. So once you catch the bug, as they say, you can't get rid of it, you know? And you just fall in love with it since then. So I think when we think of jazz, I think a lot of us think about like cocktail music or like, Frank Sinatra, which is all cool. But it's really, we have 100 years plus of this music, and it incorporates a lot of different elements. So if you guys have your outline, I kind of like put down that there's a lot of different aspects to this music besides just musical. Obviously that's the most important, we're listening to jazz. But there's also social, kind of like this more spiritual side of it as well. And this is also a history of kind of overcoming struggles and making strong artistic and social statements. And I'll go more into that as we go along here. If this is your first time hearing jazz in a live setting, I just want to explain what's going on up here, just so we're not all like glazed eyes, like what's going on. So what happens is we actually play the melody up front usually, right? So melody is usually played by the horn players, like me and Ben. We have some solos. That's the most exciting part for people. That's usually when someone, kind of just plays over the form of the song, okay? And then we usually play the melody back out. And that's usually it, right? And melody in, solos, melody. Sometimes there's some extra things thrown in, but that's the general gist of it. And it is polite to clap after solos, so we really appreciate it if you gave some of these guys love, after their solos. And the other thing I noticed is actually, so swing is one of the main components of jazz. And it's spelled more on the beats 2 and 4. We all know like beat 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Okay. So in Taiwanese music, right? I think if you guys grew up in a Taiwanese church, you all know it's 1 and 3 all the time. And when I first was introduced to this music, it was very hard for me to feel syncopation. I was like, wait, I thought this was a strong beat, So the first tune might not be the best example because it's a little fast. But I'll try to get the audience participation maybe on a later tune, and we can all try to feel that 2 and 4 all together, all right? Does that sound good? All right. Cool. All right, so I don't want to talk too much in between here, but so we're going to move on with a selection. This is going to be our first Taiwanese song, made famous by Teresa Teng. Who here knows Teresa Teng? Yeah, she's like the Beyonce of Taiwan, I guess, modern day times. So this is one of her more famous songs. This one's called Sweet as Honey, and this one's Tian Mi Mi. And you can actually see the Mandarin characters on the sheet as well. Hope you enjoy it, and sit back and relax. 1, 2, 1, 2. you haven't noticed, we're having a lot of fun up here, and we hope to definitely express that to you guys. You know, this is definitely what it's all about, making the audience feel good. You know what I mean? And you know, this is definitely what kind of brought me to this passion as well. You know, there's nothing more important to me than just making people, uplift people from whatever is going on in their lives. And I think this music has kind of served that purpose throughout history. I think we're moving on to like more of the musical aspects of jazz. I just want to mention that when I was growing up, I had a very eclectic taste in jazz, or in music. So in high school, I was actually kind of like a metalhead, a little bit, kind of weird. J-pop, J-rock, like I was listening to a lot of different kinds of music. But the one thing that actually stuck out the most to me was just jazz music in general. And I had one of the main artists, you could say, that really did it for me is John Coltrane. How many here have heard of John Coltrane? Yeah. Any of these names that I mentioned, definitely, it's worth the time. Definitely looking up their music and their life. And the other one was Art Blakey. And between those two, it's just always something just stuck in me. I was like, this sounds way different, and I didn't really know why until I went to college and started playing some gigs, and I was like, okay, I kind of getting it a little bit now. And what really intrigued me was that the musicians always felt like they were talking to you. So and jazz is a lot like language. So what we're doing up here is we're communicating to each other. And one of the more obvious aspects of that is kind of this call and response. If y'all heard like that term before, I play something and then he responds, or vice versa, right? And I think, I just want to say that, you know, with this whole music being like a language thing, when I was in Taiwan, personally, a lot of people here that know that I don't speak any Mandarin, or I'm just really bad at it, either one. And when I was in Taiwan, I went to a couple of jazz clubs. I brought my trombone with me to these jam sessions that were happening at night, right? So I would hang out with the family in the daytime and be like, okay, see ya, I'm gonna go, you know, 10 o'clock at night, I'm gonna go hang out with like random people, you know? Yeah, they were like, oh, okay, that sounds fine. All right, I'll let you go. And what happened was I could not speak to anyone in the club. That no one spoke English. I was like, okay. And then they saw I had a trombone. They're like, whoa, you know, motion me to play, right? So I take out my trombone, and the next hardship was trying to figure out what tune we wanted to play, because they didn't know they kind of knew like some of the English words. So there's this popular standard called I Remember You. I was like, I remember you, and they like understood. Oh, okay, yeah, I know that tune. You know, there's kind of like some repertoire in the jazz standards that a lot of people know and play. So as we were playing on stage, all the barriers were just broken down. I immediately felt this connection with the people I was playing, because now we had like a common ground where we can communicate in a way where I would have never like felt that from them just by language itself, right? So after we get off stage, it's like we're still trying to communicate to each other, like, oh yeah, good job, but like it was like near impossible to do it. But we really felt like, you know, we were friends, but like it was a really weird feeling, you know. So I do believe that, you know, music, and especially since jazz has such a long history of kind of being sent all around the world, it's kind of like a universal language. It's a way to kind of break down those barriers, and like, oh, it almost doesn't matter, you know, where you're from. It's just like, when you're playing, you know. So that's one of the musical aspects that really got me going in this music. And I, you know, throughout America, throughout American history, over the course of 100 years, there's kind of like 4 things that kind of maintain throughout jazz, and those 4 things are groove, melody, the blues, and improvising. And we can kind of discuss this on a later date. It's a very big topic, but it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head. So the next question, is why did I decide to arrange Taiwanese songs in this context? I could have just, kept playing like the regular jazz standards and stuff like that. Jazz has always been kind of a cultural bridge between just different cultures. So one of the first kind of influences was Latin American music and more of the swing American music. So that was kind of like the first blend, you could say, of different cultures coming together. So I wanted to do that in this context. I believe, and I think a lot of people will agree with this, is that Taiwanese melodies are kind of, well, they're very melodic, but also they're kind of like romantic. They're kind of like singing over the phrases, and I think it's just like some of the most beautiful melodies I've heard. So I wanted to see if I can bring that to the jazz context, not only so like jazz musicians can appreciate like our culture, but also that the Taiwanese culture can appreciate jazz, and back and forth. I think there always needs to be more connection between different cultures, right? Let's see. Sorry, I'm just referring to my notes. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking now. We're going to continue playing another tune that is made famous by Teresa Teng as well. A lot of you will recognize this one. This one is called "The Moon Represents My Heart." Hope you enjoy. was The Moon Represents My Heart. That was a song made famous by Teresa Teng as well. So I think other than musical reasons, there's another kind of more, I guess I felt more personal reason as to the social aspect of music. Before I thought it was purely musical elements. I was like, well, if I just learn the notes and play it in time and learn the vocabulary, then I'll be good to go, right? And what I found out through experience and from talking to a lot of other jazz musicians was that this music has served a purpose other than just entertainment. And so, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it because, you know, there's obviously 100 years of jazz, you have a lot to talk about, right? But I'm just going to say that the first pop stars to be sent around the world as ambassadors were actually jazz musicians. So people like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie, just to name a few, they were sent to other countries just as ambassadors to represent American culture. And when other countries think about some special characteristics of American culture, well, depends. Maybe nowadays, maybe not so much, but they will probably mention jazz as one of them. This music is a very democratic art form. It allows people of all races and all different kind of beliefs to get together for the singular purpose of creating music here on stage. And we're also helping each other do it. So I think it's, again, just going back to my Taiwan story, I think it's just a way to break cultural and racial barriers, you know? It's a way to bring people together. Music is usually highly influenced by the political and social climate of the time, right? So just like how Taiwanese music in the 60s kind of represented like a form of accomplishment, freedom, and honor for the Taiwanese people, jazz represented a form of freedom for the African Americans here. So, you know, just to let you know, jazz is born from the African American experience. The basis of jazz is a combination of slave song, the Southern church, the blues, the Latin American flavor, all mixed in with Western harmony. I'm just going to share a quote from Woody Shaw, who was one of the innovators on trumpet. He says, "To me, when it comes to jazz, the Afro-American is the major innovator of this music. Because we have lived the experience that have culminated jazz into a very highly developed form of music, but it's an international art form." So just like how Taiwan had like anthems for their own social movements, the eternal struggle of slavery here in this country has spurred some of the most powerful music and movements that influence artists today. I mean, Louis Armstrong was saying black and blue, and these are the lyrics: "My only sin is in my skin. What did I do to be so black and blue?" And at that time, I mean, just to say that was, you know, obviously not, you know, not accepted at that point. Billie Holiday's song "Strange Fruit" in 1939 depicts the horrors of lynching in the South. Benny Goodman was the first to hire a black musician to be part of his ensemble in 1935, way before any integration was happening. The drummer Max Roach gave lectures on social justice while also releasing albums titled "We Insist, Freedom Now Sweet," "Speak Brother Speak, Lift Every Voice and Sing." And I think in terms of like what jazz means to me and to our community, I think it could be a way to make statements. I don't want to be too political here, but just to say what you want to say in the form of music. And it has always kind of served that purpose besides just entertainment. spiritual aspect of jazz on there. What I mean is not necessarily more like a religious thing. I just remember seeing my first live show. Oh, who here has seen live jazz before? A raise of hands. Okay. I'm wondering how many of you felt kind of different after a show, or did you feel like anything changed your perspective of music? Show of hands after seeing that live show. Yeah. I think for the people that raised their hands, I think they will understand that my kind of infatuation was with the musicians on stage and their sense of focusedness and expressiveness. And there's kind of like 3 different reasons why I kind of chose this path. One of them is I really felt like this was like a sincere sense of fulfillment. I think everyone's kind of looking for that in their careers, and this was, and I think Xiao Wei over here will, for the young adults, he's kind of giving a workshop on this, but doing what you love or doing what makes money, right? And I think most people know that musicians is not exactly an easy road to take financially, but we do it, you know, we love music and we love to play. There are many jazz musicians in the past, including Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, who kind of showed us that in the past, and we're trying to aim for that musicality that they have established in the past. The second is carrying the torch of a rich American tradition. I think it's not stressed enough in school, but jazz is like literally one of the few art forms that originated from America, right? So, you know, just learning from our elders and paying it forward to the young generation, I think that's just something that we always feel kind of responsible for. And the third reason is it kind of forces, this music forces you to be kind of introspective and become like a better person. I often have to look at my own shortcomings in this music. I remember when I first learned about jazz, you know, if you haven't listened to too much of the music, you're kind of just like left in the dark. Like, what am I supposed to do up here? Like, I don't understand what's going on, you know, up the stage. So there was a lot of times where I just felt like kind of like giving up a lot. I could probably name 20 different times. I felt like kind of giving up trombone and just this music in general. Like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But you know, because I persist, I almost fall more in love with it every single time I fail really hard. Usually, you know, it used to be like a month worth of time before I realized that, and it gets shorter and shorter. So as I make mistakes, I'm like, okay, I can get over it a little bit more quickly, you know? And this music will immediately humble you, and that's for sure. Just having to come up here and play is no joke. It's hard work. And I think just like how I relate to jazz, I think all the Taiwanese songs had a very sincere emotional impact on our parents. How many of the younger generation here had grew up listening to like any Taiwanese music in their household or karaoke night? Yeah, my favorite time. So I think, you know, the kind of the romantic and more melodic style of the Taiwanese music kind of fulfilled, like, they had this sense of fulfillment by listening to the music when they weren't working super hard, right? It was a way to relax. So it was something they could value outside of work. And I think it's important for our community to realize that music is an option, just saying, putting that out there, for children. Because when I was growing up, I think a lot of people can relate to this, but our parents are like, well, if, you know, our cousin or our brother didn't do it, like, then they're like, you're not going to do that, you know? So like, it's usually the same few jobs that they kind of push you towards, like doctor or, right? So I think music needs to be stressed more, and I think we would learn to appreciate it the more we see more Taiwanese-American and just Asian-American artists in general in this music. You know, it's few and far in between. And I think it can be cultivated with the younger generation, and I think it'll do great wonders for this community to invest in art as well, because it is a path. It does work. There's people that do it as a living, so it is possible. Just putting that out there. Okay, so I think on top of this, I think relationships are really important. My wife is sleeping. Okay. She heard this many times before. That's okay. Didn't mean to call you out, sorry. But this next tune is called Wife, so I think it allows us to grow together and learn from each other. You know, even with all the mistakes and all the hardships, relationship can be encouragement to get back up and try again, right? So this song is, if you read the lyrics, it's about a romantic love letter from the wife to the husband. It's like really, I think for our parents' generation, it's a very sad song where it makes them feel just emotional. So this is a beautiful song that we actually fell in love with too. So this one is called Wife. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, being a Taiwanese-American, I'm not going to lie, is can be a little difficult in the jazz community. The reason is because, again, there's not many of us out there. I literally know like one other Taiwanese-American. He actually also plays trombone in New York City. So, in terms of just like everyone gets asked the same questions, right? It's like, okay, where are you from, right? It's like, okay, I guess I have to answer this one again. And it's like, okay, I'm from Taiwan. And it's like, oh, I love Thailand. I love Thai food. It's like, no, that's not quite it, But the more hard things to kind of understand are people kind of sometimes have a little bit of a stereotype towards Asian Americans in jazz. Sometimes it's like, oh, they can't swing, or they're too mechanical and technical with their playing, not expressive. So a lot of these things, you kind of learn how to navigate and kind of get around. And I think everyone experiences a little bit of that in this field. I think it's just natural in any field, really. But in terms of being rewarding, being Taiwanese American in this music, we're able to bring our special characteristics into jazz. So I think just because I grew up with like more of the melodic sense of music from Taiwanese like karaoke songs and stuff like that, I kind of always attach myself to melody as being like the prominent thing, and I think that's what kind of separates my upbringing from maybe other people, and so I try to bring that out in the music that I create. I didn't play any original compositions here, but I guess I'll just say it now. We did come out with an album just recently. It's called With Respect. Thank you. It features everyone in this band. We do have the sub on bass though, but he's doing a great job. Let's give it up for Ian Kenselaar. So, on that album, I put a couple of these songs that we played on there as well as original. I think the other good news is that jazz is actually growing in Taipei. I think in any major city that's doing economically okay, they tend to have a little bit more jazz clubs and music in general, right? And a lot of Taiwanese people have actually come here to study. I met a lot of they're not exchange students from Taiwan that were very serious about the music, and they know that it's probably best to come to America to learn it. And they were very dedicated towards the craft. They listened to everything that was told of them, And I think this is important because they're studying here and they're carrying their craft back to Taiwan. And it's just a cycle of like, okay, we're going to like develop our thing over here. We're going to continue with one of the theme songs from a Taiwanese drama. Who here knows Meteor Garden? Woo. All right. So this is the theme song from there. I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. Hope you enjoy it. that one's called I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. Just as some closing statements here. So just 4 different points here. I think what I learned from this music is failure is definitely an opportunity to learn. Yes, indeed. Regardless of how many horrible performances, experiences, or bad choices you make, the fact is that you hopefully love what you do, and that is what drives you towards a more important kind of success. And that kind of success is to make you a happier person and thus make everyone else around you happier, if that is the point, right? Second thing, one of the best things to light up the dark, throwing the theme in there, is to illuminate our own lives with knowledge of ourselves and what we do. How do we get here as people? What can we do to improve our situation? I think those are questions that can be better answered with a deep understanding of our history. We won't know where to go unless where we come from, and that is very true in jazz. And third point, what does it mean to be Taiwanese-American? I think the answer lies with this community here and now. The one that everyone here is sitting, this is where it starts. It's a fusion of your culture from another place and being here at the same time, and just the mixing of ideas. I think this is the way we develop as a community, and I'm glad that this has been. How long has Tang been around, Tom? Just out.
Since 2003.
2003, so that's about 15 years? Yeah, so, and I think it's very evident in the career paths that people have chosen and just the representation that we have in this community. The staff members are all just great people. I love being here. This is my 5th year doing this. So yeah, it starts here. The 4th thing is take care of business and they'll take care of you. I remember great pianist Harold Mayburn was like, take care of music, it'll take care of you, you know? I was like, no, it won't. it won't pay my bills. Like, I don't know. But, you know, no, it's so true. Just being serious about your craft, I think, will lead to opportunities that you might have not ever known. And just being an expert at what you do is really important, especially if you're going to teach it, right? On that note, we're going to conclude this with one of the most famous songs from the Taiwanese folk song repertoire. This one is Spring Breeze, and I think a lot of people here will recognize this one. And I'm going to need some help from the audience. So we're all going to start clapping on 2 and 4. Let's see how we're going to do this. All right, so we're going to, I'm going to make this up. So we're going to have, you guys play the first 4 bars, repeat. 165. Right. All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. All right. All right, cool. You keep it going, I'm going to play the melody. Thank you so much. Give it up for this great band again. Coming all the way from Jersey. Benjamin Kovacs on the tenor saxophone, Kenselaar on the bass, Nic Cacioppo on the drums, Oscar Williams second on the piano, and playing for you before was Benjamin Samuelson, who helped drive Oscar over here. And my name is Peter Lin, playing trombone. I want to thank everyone here for just soaking up all the music. You know, it's so great performing for your own community and people who recognize these songs. I'll just add a funny tidbit here. So, you know, depending on the audience that I play for, sometimes they like it more, like Taiwanese people, they're like, oh yeah, I recognize those songs, you know? So they're like, I like that aspect. And then jazz musicians, they're like, oh yeah, you know, that's a cool song, like, you know, if you know, it sounds like a standard or something, sounds like something that's been played before, and it's just funny how like different people kind of react to the music, and it definitely changes depending on the audience. So you guys are the best. I definitely appreciate it. I want to thank Tang and TACEC for putting this all together. You know, everyone can have a good day, but the thing is, we have Q&A possibly? You got time?
Yeah.
Maybe? Okay. So I'll open up the floor for this Q&A session. So.
Yes. You guys meet?
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. So for the most part, everyone here is from William Patterson. But the other ways are just like, usually for my band members, I meet them along the way just from doing other gigs. So I kind of collect them as I go. Yeah, so all William Patterson, different years, and actually Nic and Oscar were the first people I kind of like, I was like, what the heck are they doing? They would be shedding or practicing, that's the jazz term for practicing, shedding. And they'd be playing so fast, I'd be like, I can't, I don't know what's going on here. So no, it's great having everyone up here. So that's how I met William Patterson. Yes?
Kind of wish I had a mic because I feel like I have to speak this way.
Oh.
No, it's okay.
Oh, that's cool.
As long as it reaches, yes.
I should get wireless one probably.
We can go up. Well, thank you all so much for coming out here. That was fantastic. My question is not specific to Taiwan and jazz per se, but I just couldn't help the opportunity to ask you and perhaps maybe your colleagues as guest experts on this question. And it has to do with do you guys approach improvisation? So my background is in classical music and my whole family as well. And I did that young age all the way through college, but thanks to phenomenal professors that I had, the tail end of my academic music experience unfolded to a lot of different areas of music, and I love your dialogue about how jazz becomes a conversation, whether that's between you and your musicians or you and the audience. So because one of my teachers, who's also classically trained, also had a very solid interest in jazz history and tango Argentina history. She gave me this opportunity to try something that involved improvisation with a large group. And I was like, that did not come naturally at all. And I was like, because that was when I was most involved in music, towards that end, I was like, oh no, like it's too late for me. I was like, no jazz juju for me. So that's why my question has to do with you guys as jazz musicians, how you approach improvisation.
All right, thanks, Amanda. I think I'll let the other people speak first if they want to, just because they're here and they can talk besides playing music. So does anyone want to help shed some light on that? Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, once again, my name is Benjamin Kovacs. I've known Peter since we were in high school. But I think that Peter accurately described what it feels like to improvise when he was talking about it being very closely related to speech. There's so many similarities. Sometimes when you improvise, there's like quotations. You may play something that someone else has played before exactly the way they played it. There's like exclamation points. There's question marks. Peter was also talking about call and response. In classical music, that's called antecedent and consequent phrasing. So, yeah, there's definitely a long history of the type of phrasing that's used in improvisation. Yeah, so it's very speech-like, but obviously you have to know all your scales, you have to know all your arpeggios, and that's like the ABCs of music. So once you get from there, and you start to listen to music like a language, and you hear people playing off one another, it becomes a lot easier to do it yourself when you immerse yourself in it. But I think my approach, and I don't want to speak for everyone else, but yeah, we're definitely communicating in a similar way to music, using short phrases, using run-on sentences, things like that, breaking up your meter. So yeah, there's so many similarities. Anyone else?
Maybe just use this one. Just in case.
Cool. I think, that's right on. I think also sometimes there's a little bit of a misconception with improvisation. Like people will say like, wow, that was just random. You just made that up on the spot. And like that's totally not true. Like what Ben is saying, it's a serious language, and we're drawing on a lot of the same influences and a lot of different influences too, which is one of the beautiful things about this music. And we want to play the form of each song and keep it so that the melody is kind of intact and you can always hear that. So that's one of the other kind of tenets of improvisation.
I'll just add on top of that as well. I think we often forget that classical music is improvised. I mean, like, just think about it, right? Someone had to compose it at some point, and Bach was just putting them out there like so fast. How could he do that without having a good sense of understanding of music, right? So I would say the basics are always good to cover first. So a lot of us are we're reading music up here, but we're not like reading the music, you know what I mean? There's chord changes on top, and you kind of know how to navigate between these different chords in a way that is passed down through generations of this language. And like Ben says, like all that classical training does help in terms of like understanding the very basics of music. And classical music has kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. People don't acknowledge the improvised part of classical music, but someone had to compose it at some point. Someone had to make up or go upon something that was created before and do something new with it, right? So, hope that answers the question. Does anyone?
Like I said, Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the time when I improvise or solo, I'm going off sound, like the sound in the room, and that's where I agree with classical music. Even though you're reading, you know, you have a set notes that you're reading. In this room, like you're kind of improvising, adapting to the room. You know what I mean? So we do the same kind of thing. And you know, there's all different kinds of improvisation when, you know, because I play like avant-garde, kind of crazier kind of music, you know, which doesn't necessarily go on the same kind of language as, you know, so-called straight ahead jazz has. But it all kind of comes from the same place, and, you know, contemporary classical music.
Everyone said something. Okay, he said we'll be here all day if he answered that. Which is probably true. Yeah, I hope that answers that question. Anyone else? Yeah, shall we?
Sorry, thank you guys for bringing a trip up here. You guys sound great. So the word on the street is you guys dropped a new album a few weeks back. I think everyone's dying to know where can we get a copy.
Okay, well, that's great, shall we? Thank you for advertising that for me. I planted him there, in that seat specifically. So we do have the CDs. I did bring like the whole box of my physical copies. So I am selling them for $15 each, and they're you know, has 7 tracks on there. Features everyone in the band, and yeah, it's something that was just released June 22nd. So very recent, you know, get it while it's hot. It's $1 million seller. I have $1 million in the cellar. Classic. I have a bunch of them, but I just didn't break them out today. But yeah, if you want a copy, definitely see me afterwards, and I'll try to do some business. All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. All right, everyone have a good rest of the day, and thank you to the Taiwanese-American community. All right, peace.